All right, welcome back. Today we're working on a black X3 with the wonderful, quote unquote wonderful N55 engine. Has a bit of a coolant leak, so I'll pull it in the garage, see what's going on. Stay tuned. All right, bear with the background noise. It's freezing here in good old Alberta, so I've got the little propane heater going on. First thing we see, well, don't know how the hell that happened, but it blew the end of blew the hose right off. Looks like that's leaking. I don't know if it'll show up on the camera, but you can see all the shine on the belt, so the coolant's definitely got on the belt. Down the front of the engine, got onto the alternator. It's up and throughout. The one other thing that I'm definitely going to look at on this is right there, if it shows up. So that's what's called a Mickey Mouse flange. Reason being is it has two bolts that go to the top of it, and it ends up holding this hose on. So you take the hose off, you pick it all off, and it's plastic, so it ends up being very brittle and easily fails. So we're going to replace it with a billet unit I have just sitting here. So I'll run out, grab some parts, and we'll be back. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to look right on the side here, and we're going to locate the pull pin. Yeah, so right over here, if it shows up, let's get close. So you see this little pin. So what you're going to do is you're going to wedge a pick under there. You're going to pull straight up. It's going to unlock it. There'll be one on the opposite side as well. It looks like this one is, so this one will be right on the front. Okay, so right on the front there, what you're gonna do is you're gonna get a pick, put it in this little lock, pull it up, and now what you can do is you can grab the hose on both sides and wiggle it free. So let's give this a tug. Whew. Okay. As I kind of expected, it's all corroded on there. So, not the easiest thing in the world to get out. So it's definitely a good thing we're replacing it. Yeah, so right there, you can see where a piece of the hose ended up sticking on the thing. There isn't a whole lot of blue. And this side broke. This side's gonna show up. It's all just corroded with shit in there. You know, I kind of wonder if there wasn't too much coolant, and what happened is it froze and either pushed the line off or froze inside and cracked something. Well, I'm going to clean this all up and we'll be back. All right, so this might seem a little bit silly and redundant, but what we're going to do is, if you can't quite get your camera in to take a photo of it, or in this case, it's occupied and not around, we're gonna instill our creative sense in drawing a diagram of the belt routing. Harmonic balancer, tensioner, alternator. So we're gonna run A, idler, AC. So it's not rocket science, it's pretty self-explanatory. You got your harmonic balancer here. For continuity's sake, I didn't write H. So relatively self-explanatory. You have your harmonic balancer, you have your tensioner up here. So harmonic balancer, tensioner, alternator, idler, and AC. So this is the belt routing that we're going to be following. All right, so next up we've got T60. So what we're gonna do is right just inside here, there's gonna be a little opening for a T60. And this one in particular is actually going to go counterclockwise. So when you push it counterclockwise, you'll be able to slip the belt off the alternator. All right, so I stand corrected. This one's going clockwise, so we're going to cheat a little bit to get the tensioner to loosen up. Enough for us to be able to pry the belt off, hopefully. Hopefully, if it agrees with us. There we go. All right, take your extension out, take your socket out. Pick the belt out and away. All right, so what you want to do is you want to get the belt off from around the harmonic balancer and everything and bring it out. So this one here, hopefully it shows up on the camera, you can see how it's actually quite shiny. Most belts are supposed to be relatively matte. So this one was changed at some point, but because we've had a coolant leak, you're definitely going to want to change it. So here you can see where it's nice and dry, has that matte look to it. And then the further on we go, you can see where it gets shiny. So this here is actually quite slick and you can feel it on your gloves. So when coolant, which is highly concentrated glycol mixed with water, when coolant mixes on the belt, it ends up getting really slick. So in turn, all these pulleys are coated now with a layer of coolant. So N54 and N55 models tend to have an inherent flaw where if the belt ends up slipping off, it can tear, shred, wrap itself around the crank pulley, chew up the front main seal, and it can actually get inside the engine. So in turn, chews the front main, goes up and through the timing chain, up through the vanos, plugs the oil pickup, and you have a bigger problem than just a little coolant leak. So I'm going to clean this all up with brake clean and a microfiber. I'm going to pull out the Mickey Mouse flange and I'm going to show you exactly why it needs to be changed. It's not a matter of if it will fail, it's a matter of when it will fail. And being that mine had cracked and started to leak on me on a longer trip on my old E90, we're not going to screw around. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to clean the head of the bolts here, because the last thing I want to do is have them strip. So let's pull the engine cover off. Cap back on, actually. Looks okay in there. Sometimes you'll see this milky mixture when you haven't driven it too much or if it's sat around for some time. Of course, a milky mixture is water mixing with the oil. If you see it in the oil cap, kind of take a peek inside to see if there's anything more. If you drain the oil and you got a milkshake mixture, you got a bigger problem. So here, I'm gonna see if we can slide this harness up and out of the way. So first things first, see if I can get this 10 mil in here. So I crack this one free. Yep. See if we can get the second one. Now, a lot of the time I do recommend pulling the rad fan out. It gives you a lot more room to play with. In this case, apparently I'm a glutton for punishment. So I'm going to do everything while I have the risk of dropping a bolt into the engine bay. And then it's not going to be a 10 mil socket that I need to chase for. It's going to be a 10 mil bolt. Yeah, I would shove the camera in here, but there's no chance in hell you'd be able to see anything. So hopefully it shows up on the camera. We're going to wheel this coolant hose out of its little clip. See if the Mickey Mouse is going to come out. Yeah, slowly. Oh, gross. All right, safety first. We're going to use some glasses and a Dremel. And what we're going to do is this little tab here. Because I want to show you exactly how this can feel, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly cut the band, being very careful, and then I can show you on the bench what the problem is. All right, so after there was a bit of a score on that band, let's see if we can fit the pliers in there to pry it off. Mickey Mouse flange, band, and the flange. So yeah, actually you can see here. So this one here, this isn't actually from me being too hard on it. It just crumbles away, you see? Like it just falls apart. When you're on a road trip and that starts to happen, it could just blow out on you. On Taylor's N54, as he pulled up, it just blew out on him, and fortunately we had the parts here and it was relatively quick to do, but same thing, you gotta go through changing your belt and everything because it decided to make a mess all over it. So we're just going to clean it all up. First things first, alternator. We're gonna soak down really nice. Do all brake clean, give it a spin. Power steering, AC thing, brake clean. Idler, brake clean. Harmonic balancer, brake clean. Belt tensioner, brake clean. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to bundle it up, press it against the pulley and spin it so it gets into the ribs really nice on each one of them. Idler, same thing. This one I can usually get one hand in there. So I'll just wipe it side to side as I spin it. Let's try here. Okay, doesn't help for the video, but I assure you I'm cleaning it really well. All right, so the harmonic balancer actually looks relatively dry, so I don't think much, if any, coolant got on that one. So in turn, let's spin the pulley again, brake clean again, brake clean again, bring back our good friend blow gun. And all we're trying to do is rotate them while blowing air on them enough that you end up seeing it go from a gloss while it's wet to matte. Just want to make sure everything's nice and dry. Next things we're going to concentrate on is the coolant ports here. Just make sure that they're free of any coolant that's dripping. It'd be counterproductive to put a brand new belt on it and then it's dirty. So grab your paper towel, wrap around it, give it a nice clean. Make sure there's no grit or corrosion from the hose itself. And there's going to be a little lip here that the clip sits in, so just make sure there's nothing in there. All right, so we got the one clean. This plastic one, it's going to be a bit of a pain to get off. Because it broke funny, we're going to have to wedge just a flathead in here to try and give it a little motivation. Since the other one was so corroded, I figure this one's going to be equally the same. Okay, so this here, same thing. It has a little, I don't know why I want to call it a cotter clip. It's not a cotter clip. It's just a little pin or circlip or however. See if I can give this a little twist. Yep. Okay, so that's off. And of course, in BMW's infinite wisdom, this is all very brittle. So the last thing I want to do is be a little bit rough with this, and then all of a sudden you need to get another hose. No bueno. And again, in BMW's infinite wisdom, put the top of the clip way on the back side. So I don't think that one's going to show up on the camera. So you push that clip, flathead in there. Let's see if I can wiggle it out. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the bottom one is out now. All right. Let's do a quick inspect. You know what? It did warp. Nothing immediate is standing out to me as to why this one failed. So let me go in with microfibre, clean up each of these. Top one. Okay. So it looks okay too. So haven't forgot about this boy here. So let's clean the inside of this. To give you an overview, everything here, nice, spotless, squeaky clean. You can see right at the bottom where there's a bunch of coolant that had spilt from before, but the pulleys are really nice. Looks like there's stuff on them, but that's just dust from being in the garage. So I'll give them a quick spray. Inside here, clean. Upside down in the radiator port, clean. This one here, clean. This one, clean. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring it back on the bench and I'm gonna show you the parts that we ordered. All right, so we got an order from FC Piero. First up, we've got a Continental belt, 8PK 1390, excuse the war wound. So this will be the serpentine belt that we're going to use. We have a Rain, so it's an OE quality upper radiator hose. So this will be exactly what we need. It's a little more malleable than the other one, and the reason I didn't want to put just a hose clamp on the existing one is I don't know how old it is. This one's brand new, and they have nice band clamps on that. And last but not least, we ordered the Rain Mickey Mouse flange. It's a nice billet piece, and it comes with a little spring clamp here. Again, by Rain. I think it's relatively inexpensive, 30 bucks Canadian, made in good old Turkey. We're gonna open these up and get replacing. Of course, we picked up some coolant from BMW. Of course, they have to be different. Is this any different than what you might end up getting other than the color? I don't know. There might be some additives that we put in here. This one I haven't mixed yet. So it's a new jug. We'll mix it up 50-50. So it'll be 50 parts water to 50 part coolant for our good old Canadian winters. And let's get installing. First thing I'm gonna attempt to do is on most of these, there's a little hole just to the side of it. Let me show you. So there'll be that little orifice there. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little hole. So what you do is you take an Allen key, and you're gonna put your T60 on the end of that, and you're gonna rotate it enough just so the Allen key slips right over top that ledge there. I don't know if you can see it. Let me point at it with the light. No, it's not gonna show you. So right over top there, there's a little edge the Allen key is gonna sit on, and it's gonna end up pinning the tensioner. After we pin the tensioner, it's gonna be much easier to install the serpentine belt. All right, so wedge my fat hand in there. So you get it started right on the end. So you can see right there, the Allen key. Pull this out, take a breather. And first things first, I always look at the belt just to see which way Continental is. You could do it in either way. It's not a directional belt, but for me, it's nice just having everything lined up and pointing in the same direction. So I'm gonna start by snaking the belt. So after you snake it around the harmonic balancer and around the AC, you're gonna wanna snake it around the idler, pull it taut, because you're gonna need every little bit. The final one you're gonna end up wedging it on is the alternator. Okay, so that wasn't so bad. All right, so you can see tensioner is pinned. It's around the harmonic balancer. Each rib's contacting the alternator, the AC, and it's sitting relatively flush on the idler. So what you wanna do, and I've had this almost bite me before, just go with your hand, make sure it's dead center of the pulley, because I've had it where I've gone to rotate the engine with a wrench on the crank pulley, and it started to walk off the idler. So the last thing you want to do is fire it up, walks off the idler, choose a belt, and you have a bigger issue. All right, one thing you would never expect to have in your garage, Vaseline, literally. So what some people like to do is they like to put oil around the O-rings when they go to install them. Oil can technically swell rubber. A lot of these would end up being Vitin, so it's less of a concern, but can't go wrong with a little bit of petroleum jelly. So lube up the O-ring, nothing crazy, just enough for it to slide in. You don't need to worry about if this is gonna mix with the coolant, it's gonna be perfectly fine. Close it up, take it to the car, and I'll show you how to pop it in. All right, so I won't be able to show you this on camera. It's quite a tight fit there. I could barely fit my hand in. All right, let's see if I can get this in. Now, because it's relatively tricky, what you need to do is it needs to go in dead straight. So once it's in dead straight, kind of hold it there. And what I try to do is with my knuckle or my backhand, I try to just coax it to pop in here. So once you end up getting the Mickey Mouse flange in, you're left with putting the hose back on. So putting the hose back on isn't too big of a deal, but I have this one tool that I wanted to show you that's really neat. So in here, what it does is it'll actually pinch down on the hose clamp. So as you ratchet it, so this one, as you ratchet it, it locks into place. So now you can end up having 2 free hands and you slide this over the hose, you get it into position, and all you do is you end up pulling the little trigger. Super neat. So let's try and do this without knocking the camera over. I'm gonna slide this one up and over the top. And I don't know if it'll show up on camera. So you push the end of the hose over the Mickey Mouse flange. All right, so we got the hose in, we got it back in place. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this clip oriented in a proper way. I think that looks good. Yep. Once you've double, triple, quadruple checked, I don't know how many times, hold the clamp with your one hand, and with your other hand, release it. That's it. Super simple. I don't know where I got this, but fantastic thing to have laying around in the garage. It's one of those tools you would never expect that you would need, but when you have it, it's a godsend. So hose looks good. And next, we're gonna put the hose back in. So this is somewhat self-explanatory. We're gonna use our good old Vaseline. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna lube up the O-rings, just like that. A little bit of Vaseline, nothing crazy. That way, they're not gonna roll on you. Same thing you'll end up seeing right here. You just give a little pull, okay? Locks open, in turn on the other side, slide it in. Okay, now we got both sides that are open. And what we're gonna start with is probably pushing it onto the radiator side, just inside here. Now, these are keyed, so they're only gonna slide in one way. So you'll see, as soon as you get it, slides in, and in turn, that clip, let's push it in, give it a wiggle, nice and in place. The one on the oil filter housing, give it a wiggle, slide it in place, clip. It's good to go. This bottom hose here goes right into the bottom here. So we're gonna slide it back into the little tab, get it in place. Same thing, click. Perfect, so we got 3 out of 4. Top one, super simple, self-explanatory, clip it in. Now, what I like to do, give them all a wiggle. Normally this top one, if you end up giving this one a wiggle and this hose is used, this little nipple will end up breaking off. So bottom one wiggle, radiator wiggle, top wiggle, coolant hose, wiggle. Right, okay. So we have our little diagram that we drew before, okay? All we're gonna do is we're just gonna verify that everything looks good, everything's in place. Now this one here, you remember how we put this Allen key in here? So just a little Allen key. You get your T60 with your ratchet. For the T60, I have one that's relatively long. You can get shallow ones. It's much easier if you have a shallow one and you have a snipe. This one's okay when you remove the rad fan, but I was feeling a bit lazy, I guess, and didn't feel like doing that. All right, this one has your push and tension on it. It's gonna be quite a bit. Slide out the Allen key. Got that here. Now, as you release it, you have to be really slow. Okay, so it's taken out. Now, first glance, I don't know if it shows up. You can see that the belt isn't completely on that pulley. So I'm not completely happy with that. So I'm gonna put this back in. I'm not gonna take any risk. We're gonna wedge it in there, take a bit of tension off, and I'm just gonna nudge the belt just a little bit. Yep, bang, right in the middle. Okay, so after this one's done, you have 2 options. You can either bump the starter just a little bit, just to make sure that it's gonna be straight. Or another thing you could do is you could reach all the way down there. If the rad fan was out, you could turn the motor by hand, but you're gonna be fighting compression. For this one, I think I'm gonna bump the starter. Worst case, if it turns on, I'll shut it off right away. So I'll do that off camera and hope for the best. Okay, so we've bumped the starter. Now we're just gonna verify. Yep, still good, still good, still good. Bottom one's still good. Okay, so what I'm gonna start now, because everything looks good, I'm gonna mix the coolant and I'm gonna fill up the reservoir here and I'll walk you through the bleed procedure. Okay, so I've got a couple of these jugs that I have saved over the years. So I'm gonna use the little bit that's left in this one because it's gonna take the majority of the next one. So I've pre-mixed it. Now we're gonna fill it. So when I mix them as you would, 50% water, 50% coolant. So what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna put the engine cover back on and we're gonna have it cycle through the water pump. What you wanna do is you wanna have your foot on the throttle depressed for 12 seconds as you turn the ignition on. Don't have your foot on the brake. It's not gonna start, but eventually you're gonna hear the water pump kick in because it's an electric water pump. So once it kicks in, it takes a while, I don't know, 5, 8, 10 minutes for it to do its thing. I can already hear it burping, so the coolant level is probably gonna go low. We're gonna run it once, and then I'll take it for a drive, clean out this engine bay, all the coolant that's kind of stuck in the nooks and crannies. There's no point in sitting there and trying cleaning it. I'm gonna just degrease the entire engine bay, spray it down. It'll look good. Okay, so it's done its bleed procedure. So I'm just gonna put the cap back on, one click. One thing I did midway is I ended up putting a battery charger on. It's a good thing to have. It's pretty power hungry when it ends up going through the procedure. So I'm gonna crack the door and give it a start. Take a listen, look for leaks. So far, so good. So far, so good. No leaks from Mickey. All the pulleys are spinning good. That's okay. Let it idle for a bit, get up to temp, and then we'll take it for a wash. So the one thing that's scaring me a little bit is the exhaust. It's a lot more than I would expect, but you can see it's actually puffing. So it sounds like the engine has the slightest miss, but it's actually puffing through the one side. What my coworker ended up explaining is that when he was driving it, it ended up giving him an overheating error. And when it gave him the overheating error, he drove it for a few minutes after, obviously because the rad hose had come off. My biggest concern was that it would superheat the air actually going into the cylinder head, only because there's no coolant. So my concern would be head gasket ultimately. I'll monitor it, I'll take it for a drive, I'll keep an eye on the coolant temps, and hopefully it's okay. Okay, so looks a lot better after a little spray. No more residue, no more grime, no more garbage. Under here, you're not gonna see a whole heck of a lot other than brand new belt. So there tends to be a little bit of hate out for these engines. The N55 hasn't exactly been known to be the most reliable. They tend to spin bearings whenever they just are having a bad day. This one seems pretty good, seems to be well maintained. Should be good. I don't foresee too many issues, but we'll go from there. That's all for today. See you guys on the next one.